And because of Trump's tariffs, these companies are now calling us. They're worried. They're trying to navigate increased costs, disruptions in their supply chain, and frankly, they're just so worried, the uncertainty of it all. They just don't know what to plan or prepare for and how to move forward. So, Ms. Robbins, I'm going to ask you, could you discuss about how the uncertainty, not just for your business, but for yourself, your family, and everything you put into it, how have the administration's tariffs really impacted you, and how small manufacturers are particularly vulnerable?
Thank you so much for your question. Small manufacturers are really clinging to life right now.
Yeah.
My small team, which I could count on one hand, has spent countless hours crunching numbers, running models, worst-case scenarios, searching for new suppliers, attempting to set up accounts with those, forecasting expenses, calculating and recalculating price increases, only for the situation to change drastically with no notice. It creates such an environment of uncertainty that I don't understand how someone could invest in an economy without having some level of certainty you can regain your investment. I've invested $1.2 million into our company to manufacture guitar pedals. We do all of our manufacturing here in Akron, Ohio. And to manufacture more than we do now would be like asking a baker to make flour. The uncertainty from day to day, we have a weekly meeting where we discuss the tariff impacts and try to determine how to proceed. We certainly need to increase our prices as our costs have drastically risen. However, they don't. The landscape doesn't stay the same from week to week.
That's right.
So I don't know how to proceed. Right. It's complete uncertainty.
And how stressful is that? And how stressful is the people who work with you and believe
incredibly stressful
in all of what you're doing? And of course, we have a lot of live music in Nevada, so I'm sure there's some folks who've been buying them from you. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry that you're going through all of that trauma, and hopefully we can get some certainty going forward.
Ms. Robbins, let me ask you a question. The tariff situation, obviously, is somebody, I can remember every little bit, when you're a truly small business, every little bit makes a difference. And I think tariffs went up, then they've been suspended, now it's 3 months. That uncertainty is chaos. I know how hard that is. How have you guys navigated the uncertainty around the tariff issue, and how to make your planning of when do you make infrastructure investments, and how do you assess that? How are you able to grow?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator. We're not able to grow under the tariffs. The tariffs have created complete uncertainty. They're changing from week to week. You mentioned, that they announced a reduced tariff rate and a 90-day pause, but I'm still not clear on exactly how much I'm paying in tariffs. Is it 30% plus the 2018 plus the fentanyl? That would put me at 75%. That's still huge. Yes, we do. We count every penny, and I used to be a financial planner, and as a business, we're planning a year out easily. And now I don't know what's happening next week and 3 months, and it's impossible to navigate these circumstances. Right. So, we had forecast a price increase. Things had been the same for 2 weeks. We were going to roll it out, and now the tariffs have changed, so we're going to hold on to that. I also know that my customers have been loading in on foreign imports. My customers are retail stores.
Right.
They've been loading in on foreign imports during this reduced tariff pause because they're speculating that it's going to go back up. Yep. So just another way this is backfiring and hurting U.S. small businesses.
Right.
Thank you.
Good.
One of the programs that I helped create when I got to Congress, and that I continue to think is very important, and in fact worked with Chair Ernst on it last year, is the State Trade Expansion Program, the STEP program, which you mentioned, Ms. Robbins. It helps small businesses sell internationally, and when we think about the fact that about 95% of our markets are outside of the United States, it's really important for us to help small businesses get into those markets, because right now, fewer than 5% of small and medium-sized businesses do business overseas. You mentioned in your testimony that you currently manufacture in the U.S. to sell internationally, but that now you're having to consider moving production overseas just to export. Can you talk a little bit more about the impact that the tariffs have had on actually pushing your production offshore, and what that means for your company long term? You talked a little bit about the potential to need to downsize to address that, but in addition to that, what would the loss of the STEP program and the technical assistance and grants that provide mean to your business?
Thank you very much for your question. The STEP program, the way Ohio disperses the funds is through the SBDC and an image grant. The image grant reimburses us partially reimburses us for activities related to exporting. It also provides education. So currently we're participating in a program called the Global Target Program with a focus on Latin America. It prepared us for a trip to Brazil last month and set us up for success in that market. I'm incredibly grateful to the staff at the local SBDC. Very knowledgeable. They bring in experts and connect us to others. But as you mentioned, unfortunately, I need to consider offshoring my manufacturing. And that's because, as I mentioned, our sales are down, and sustained losses put us at risk of bankruptcy by the end of the year. We have perfect credit, and we've never missed a payment, but we're rapidly running out of liquidity. In addition, the tariffs make our products exceedingly expensive. My competitors overseas do not have that problem. And so in order to compete, I feel that we may need to diversify and manufacture overseas to serve export markets.
Thank you. And again, if you could speak a little bit, one of the things that we have learned from the skinny budget, in quotes, that the administration has sent to us on appropriations is that it would eliminate the STEP program entirely. What would that mean in terms of future, assuming that tariffs are addressed in ways that allow you to build back some of those markets? What would that mean for you if you no longer have access to that technical assistance and the funds that are available through the STEP program?
It would have a really devastating impact, especially for businesses that don't have the education experience that we have. We've learned a lot by benefit of this program and access to those experts. A new startup or another small business just starting to get into exports, they would lose such a valuable resource. Just an example of what a global target session may be like, it would be, maybe 12 other business owners looking to increase their exports, and they would bring in an expert or two to speak about a variety of topics relevant to exporting: marketing, legal compliance, financing your exports, taking payments, things like that. Helps to demystify the complexity and also creates a greater network of experts to reach out to. So, while I would be hurt, I think that it would be much harder for businesses that don't have the same experience that we have to get a leg up.
You're a similar company that makes electronic parts and turns those into something that musicians can create with. So how are you thinking about this tariff situation, and what do we need to do to help more businesses like you grow?
Thank you so much for your question, Senator. I was really fortunate that a lot of the investing that I did in our business happened before the tariffs were increased. So in 2022, we invested in a state-of-the-art PCB assembly line, and under the current tariffs, that would be maybe triple in price. The tariffs have really made it more challenging for us to recoup our existing investment in our business and are putting us at risk of bankruptcy if these conditions continue. We have perfect credit and we've never missed a payment, but like I said, we're running out of liquidity. And our home is collateral on our loans, so if we miss payments and we default, we will lose everything that we work for, including our home, just as our 2 daughters are in college. And I don't see taking on additional debt as the answer. I also don't know why somebody would invest in a company that is currently losing money without a clear path to success. I also find the suggestion that I borrow money and pay interest to finance taxes and fees abruptly imposed on me by the government with no notice and no consideration. I find that suggestion offensive. And I believe the tariffs need to be reversed immediately, or at the very least, small businesses need to be exempted.
Small businesses definitely have a lot less flexibility. Do you have a big export market for your devices?
We do. We've worked very hard to increase our exports. They're approximately 30 to 40% of our sales, although just in the last few months, we have seen that number drop drastically due to anti-American sentiment and the chaos that the global financial markets have experienced due to this chaotic trade policy.
You know, I find it takes a lot to become an exporter. We have, in the Northwest, we had programs in the 80s where we just encouraged everybody to do it. I don't know if it was our geography or just an ethos, but we encouraged people to do it. And it's hard because you're taking a risk anyway as a business person, but you're taking more risk because now you have less control over. That's why we support the Export-Import Bank so much, because it lessens that risk. But we find that ends up being 25, 30, and you're saying in your case 40% of sales opportunities. It makes sense. You have a whole global market to pursue. What are some of your best markets for exports?
Europe, Australia, Canada, Japan, anywhere that guitar music is popular, guitar-based music, and where incomes are high enough to afford some discretionary spending.
Okay, so friendly countries to us. Anyway, we should have good relationships with them, and this shouldn't really be the barrier that it is at this moment.
That's right, but we've offended a lot of our allies.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And it has a profound impact on small businesses and consumers all across the country. And it places small businesses at a competitive disadvantage. They're not able to weather the storm the way bigger companies are. Ms. Robbins, you are already a 100% U.S. manufacturer. But as you stated in your testimony, it's entirely impractical for you to be able to manufacture all the raw materials and components that go into your final product in the United States, especially with the current tariffs. Can you describe why this would be near impossible at this time?
Thank you for your question, Senator. Yes, I'd be happy to. First of all, any type of investment like this would require months or years and a lot of money, and I don't have that time and I don't have that money right now, especially as I'm being taxed heavily. I can also share some data with you. One of my friendly competitors did an analysis on what it would take to reshore just one of the components that goes into a pedal. So this one that I have here behind these knobs is what's called a potentiometer. And they are used to adjust parameters on a pedal, such as tone, level, distortion, etc. So his annual volume on this part, he uses 130,000. So it's one of his most frequently used parts. And his current cost—
130,000 what?
Potentiometers.
Okay.
Okay?
Beautiful.
And his current cost is 22 cents, and his annual cost is $28,600. The analysis showed that the cost per part would be $3.75 for an annual cost of $487,500, over 17 times the cost.
For you?
For a company that was attempting to reshore a single part. Mm-hmm. So the tooling would be $238,000. That's 8 times the annual cost. And that's just one part of hundreds that go into an effect pedal. So he actually listed here the 9 different parts that go into making this. And I'd like to submit this for the record. And I'd like to thank John Cusack for providing me with this evidence today. Thank you.
Without objection, we'll have that entered into the record.
So, as you mentioned in your testimony, you were named SBA Exporter of the Year in 2019. So no one does it better than you. You're number one. And so now tariffs are imposed. So describe that in terms of the daily headaches that you're now confronting.
It's basically all we do now is try to navigate this environment. I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I'm not putting out new products. I'm not growing. I'm not thriving. I'm not hiring. I've actually canceled job openings. These are all things that I'm not doing. What I am doing is worrying, stressing, things changing from day to day, thinking over my employees and how they're dependent on our health care to manage their chronic conditions or chronic conditions of loved ones, thinking of my daughters and how they're relying on myself and my husband for our income to complete their education. This is what I'm doing. I'm not doing things that are productive.
Right. So President Trump's motto of short-term pain for long-term gain. So you're sitting there, you're short-term pain, but that short-term pain could turn into long-term pain for you. It could be an extinction event.
Absolutely.
It could be an obliteration event, not a liberation day, but an obliteration day, huh? If this goes on for too long. So do you really feel that he's picking winners and losers here? Apple gets a pass, other big companies get a pass, and you're down there trying to figure it out all by yourself.
I do. I do think that the disparity between large and small businesses has grown wider. I'm here publicly stating how poorly my business is doing while those companies are, meeting royalty in the Middle East. It's a huge disparity.
Yeah, do you have lawyers and lobbyists here in town helping your company?
No.
Does Apple? Yes.
Yeah. They have
Does
departments.
Google? Yes. All these big companies, they do. You have no one here, except for this committee, actually. We're supposed to be your advocates to protect you. So you just think there's a disproportionate impact on you, huh?
That's correct. I do have some advocates. The Main Street Alliance is working hard to level the playing field and elevate the voices of small businesses, and I really appreciate their support. But it still does not compare to what the large companies have.
So do you keep a bottle of Pepto-Bismol now nearby as each day's stories, give you something else to think about and worry about?
As a small business owner, I'm used to navigating challenges.
Yeah.
I have excellent problem-solving and stress management skills, as you must, to be in this position. However, I just don't see solutions. They're just not immediately available, and I need immediate solutions. So, in my opinion, the only option is to rescind the tariffs, to pass the bill that you've mentioned, exempting small businesses. It's just not survivable. As you mentioned, I believe we're facing the mass extinction of small businesses. We are clinging to dear life. The reason you're not seeing bigger numbers of the fallout in the economy is because of folks like me that our house is on the line. We're going to do everything we can to save our businesses, to keep our employees employed. We're also not like big companies that we're going to slash jobs the moment the forecast change.
So just one final question. I appreciate your indulgence, Madam Chair. When the president announces that he's in the process of beginning to try to find an agreement with China, does that just lift the cloud off your head and all of a sudden you're feeling, instant relief? And what does that mean to you when you hear that they're trying to get a deal, they don't have a deal, and then there's still 179 countries left to go to get a deal with?
There's absolutely no relief. It just creates more confusion and uncertainty, and it actually creates some effects such as retail stores loading in on products from China in order to get things in before the tariffs theoretically go up even higher. That's what happened over the last month while there's been a break on the other reciprocal tariffs. So it absolutely doesn't help us. It just extends the period of uncertainty, and I really need to be making changes now, and I can't due to this uncertainty. You know, in the U.S., where we sell to retailers, and it is our largest market, if you make a price increase, you really can't go backwards, you know, and the more that you increase your price, the less competitive, the less affordable that you'll be to end users. And you really can't predict how much further your demand will fall when you raise prices. And it's certainly not something that you want to do repeatedly. So having something that I could plan for, you know, we absorbed the 2018 tariffs. They were 25%. That was difficult, but we did it. What's going on now is absolutely so challenging. I don't know a way forward.
Yeah. So thank you, Madam Chair.